Welcome to Sputnik, orbiting the world, with me, George Galloway.
And me, Gayatri.
Now that Nelson Mandela has been laid to rest, arguably the greatest global black icon remaining is a man who did his talking not just with his fists, but with the silverest of tongues. Muhammad Ali. From the beginning at the Rome Olympics in 1960, he was the smartest, the prettiest, the best, the greatest. He could have been a contender for all-American hero status, but he was a man with inconvenient convictions. He announced he was a Muslim and that he had no quarrel with them Viet Cong. "No Vietnamese ever called me nigger," he said. They stripped him of his title, heavyweight champion of the world, and barred him from making a living in the ring during what would have been the best earning 4 years of his life. But he disproved the old boxing adage that champions never come back. Muhammad Ali came back not once, but twice. But in truth, he never went away. His last fight took place this month in 1981 in the Bahamas against Trevor Berbick. Though he lost his last fight, he was by then unbeatable in global affection. Shortly, we'll be talking to the London-based Dutch photographer Christina Jansen, who got closer to the great man than most of his opponents in the ring did, and who has lovingly produced some of the greatest portraits of him, many of which should soon hang in the British Parliament in an exhibition sponsored by me. But first, Gayatri put her red gloves on and took on the opinions about Ali in one of London's famous boxing clubs. How was it, Mrs. G?
It was fantastic. It was very great to be among these young boxers who really idolize Muhammad Ali.
Let's take a look.
Wow, he did so many things for boxing and also for humanity, which is not about just the sport, but, you know, icon for everything. I mean, starting from the Vietnam War where he didn't go, and, you know, standing for the right of black people in America, and, you know, it's like, to me, the greatest.
He was not just American hero, he was the world's hero. He was what we call international, or like the Jamaicans would use, or the West Indians would use, is an outer national, all over the world.
And he had the style and but then the charisma and almost the image and the mythology of the man is really what I think kind of makes him so enduring, I would imagine.
And they have things up on the walls and had his quotes. He was so intelligent and he was so ahead of his time, really.
Joining us now in the red corner is famous photographer Christina Jansen. Christina, thanks for coming on board the Sputnik. You have gotten close to Muhammad Ali, as I put it in the introduction, closer than many of his opponents ever got. So first of all, before we discuss his professional life, as it were, what's he like as a person?
Absolutely wonderful, very warm. He treats everyone around him the same as everyone else. So he doesn't.
He did make that point in one of your pictures. I liked that. He said, "I'm a man who was humorous and who treated everyone right."
And he did. The reason I got to meet him and got to photograph him is I was just basically employed as a photographer to take stills on a commercial that he was making for when he retired from boxing. For a while he had different businesses, and this was in Fulham Studios, 1986, believe it or not.
Can't possibly be true.
And so I got the call and I arrived, and he was sitting there on the sofa surrounded by lots of children who were completely enamoured with him, and he was doing magic tricks and making fun. And he made hankies appear from everywhere. And basically what I got from him is I found him to be like a big kid, really. That's what he was like. And they said, "Go and sit next to him." And I went, "No, no, no, it's fine, it's fine." But within no time, I got to know him very well, and he just chatted away, and he told me his philosophy of life, which has actually sort of kept me going all these years and had a major effect on me.
That's the first noteworthy thing. I mean, no disrespect to boxers. I was a boxer.
Yes.
They're not normally known for having a philosophy of life.
No.
At least not most of them. What is his philosophy of life?
Well, he has various different ones. The one he told me personally, and you don't see in all the books and so on, although it's well known, I think, is that he said, Christina, he said, if you reach for the moon, you might end up next door. But if you reach for the stars, you might get to the moon. And I think what he does for everybody is give them inspiration to be brave, to have a go, to believe in yourself. And nowadays that's quite hard to do, when everybody sort of seems to be trying to stop you to doing the things you want to do.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fantastic. So I've
Do you find him a braggart? I mean, I myself like that quote. I saw it in your work. It's not bragging if you can back it up.
Precisely. And also, you know, he said things like, if a person's not willing to take risks in life, you'll get nowhere. It's about just just keeping the faith. And my goodness, did he do that when he refused to go to war and was willing to go to prison, and all of the brave things he's done in his life. And the most magnificent example.
Well, the level of sacrifice is underestimated by today's generation, because for the 4 years that he was banned from making a living as a boxer, at the absolute height of his physical boxing prowess, he would have made, in financial terms, a phenomenal amount of money. But he was ready to make that sacrifice. He could have joined the army, and he would have been given a job of going around for photo calls and celebrity showbiz appearances. He would never have actually been asked to fight the Vietnamese. But he refused because, as he put it, he had no quarrel with the Vietnamese.
And I believe also it was his religion too that said that. But you know what he did during that period of time? He actually fed his brain. He read books upon books, and he went and lectured in different universities. He actually lectured, I've seen a piece at Harvard University.
Really?
So what he did in that time, he made the most of, and just as was very hungry about learning about the world, all politics, all religions. So this is why, you know, he comes out with his amazing...
Well, his politics were, of course, influenced by Islam, but he had a very eclectic selection of sources. We have a wonderful picture of him with
Malcolm X,
yes. But he broke, of course, with Malcolm.
He broke with him. They were very, very close, very good friends, but they broke with each other after Malcolm X left the Nation of Islam.
But didn't Ali regret that?
Oh, he said that was the biggest mistake that he ever made in his life.
Everybody makes mistakes. I mean, but you know, and the other one I think is that when he was boxing and he was, you know, showing off, and that whole game of, you know, trying to kind of have the mental sort of
superiority
over the other, and I think of once or twice he went a bit far and he regrets that, but it was, you know, that was just a game to him.
You'd have to have been there, as I, unfortunately, because I'm rather older, was. When he was taunting people, what's my name, what's my name, it was because they refused to use his name.
Oh, when he went from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali.
They insisted on what he called his slave name, Cassius Marcellus Clay. And they refused to call him by his name, which was then Muhammad Ali. So, although it seemed cruel, I remember very well the Ernie Terrell fight, for example. He was constantly... He could have knocked Terrell down and won. But he kept him on his feet for 9 rounds so he could keep saying, what's my name? What's my name?
I think that's amazing. He's just got a fantastic sense of humour. And everyone around him is you know, always...
He filled the ring. Does he fill a room when you're with him?
Yes. And you know how... And I don't say this lightly, but when I met him, he did have this very special aura around him, you know, and that... You don't meet many people that have that.
I really am not surprised by that. I used to get up in the middle of the night, literally, because at that time satellite transmission, thanks to Sputnik, had only just begun. And my father, God rest his soul, would wake me up in the middle of the night to go downstairs and watch his fights. Here was a black fighter who was not only brilliant, mesmerizingly so in the ring, but who had so much to say for himself and so articulately.
I was trying to remember when I was little. I watched it when I was in Holland too, And I remember, you know, and the fact he was not only a brilliant boxer but an entertaining to watch with his famous shuffle and the whole kind of theatre of it.
Now I'm sponsoring an exhibition of your photographs of Ali, which should hang in the British Parliament sometime in the coming year.
Yeah.
Just tell us quickly the kind of pictures you'll see in it.
Well, I mean, the inspiration behind the exhibition is, first of all, I had a set of pictures, obviously, from 1986. And I felt very protective about Ali at the time. There's been an awful lot of people wanting things from him. And for some reason, I put my pictures away in a drawer for 20 years. Brought them out a few years ago after someone said, have you got some more? I had one image I was showing of Ali when he was lying down looking into the camera, and so that's the one. Brought the rest out. Then I heard that the Olympics was coming and it would be Ali's 70th birthday. And having known Ali, I thought, how, as a photographer, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Don McCullers and photographers that go out and risk their lives and do something for this world. I can't do that, but I wanted to give something back to the world, and I'm a huge supporter of Amnesty International and so on as well. And I thought, well, perhaps I could celebrate Ali's 70th birthday, help raise some money for various causes, including Parkinson's and so on. So I then began this, trying to gather the top images to tell the story of Ali's life, along with my little time with him, and gather them from all around the world. And I put together 70 images
70.
For his 70th birthday, and I managed to get a gallery that overlooked the Olympic Stadium, and that also flew over Muhammad's brother, because I was told that Muhammad was too poorly to bring over at the time. So Rahman Ali, who was at Ali's side his whole life, and you know, obviously a loving supporter and so on, came over with his wife and opened the show, and it was amazing.
Well, who knows? Let's hope we can get the champion himself to come over for the parliamentary exhibition. He asks in this how I would like to be remembered. He says, and if all that's too much, then I guess I'd settle for being remembered only as a great boxer who became a leader and a champion of his people. And I wouldn't even mind if folks forgot how pretty I was. They'll never forget, not least thanks to your
Do you know, he actually
photograph.
asked me, am I still good looking? And I was like, am I going to tell this big boxer? No.
Christina Jansen, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Indeed. After the break, we'll be reviewing the British economy, which feels like it's in the 15th round of a grueling, punishing bout. We'll be talking to RT's own champion economics prize fighter, Stacy Herbert of the Keiser Report. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sputnik. British Chancellor of the Exchequer, Gideon Osborne, he calls himself George, though that is not his name, because Gideon sounds, well, just too posh, has turned out to be several years out in his forecast for balancing the British books, but his austerity blows have left a lot of blood on the British canvas. Who better to review his performance thus far than Stacy Herbert? Stacy, welcome to the Sputnik. I make the point because if you listened to George Osborne, you'd think that we were, if not now swimming happily, gambolling in the green meadows, the Elysian fields of newfound prosperity, all based on less than 1% growth in the economy. But if you're actually in the world, in the country, you're still shivering.
Well, it's not bragging if you can back it up, so somebody famous once said. So I want to point to something that he said in the autumn statement, that the deficit is declining. They're focused very much on the deficit. Well, here, my boxing glove says UK deficit at 185 billion, not 90 billion, as George Osborne says, warns MPs. And this is from the Public Accounts Committee. So there's a lot of lying going on about the state of the economy. I'm sure you see it when you're doing the vox pops out in the street. There's rising homelessness, there's visits to the soup kitchens. Down on the street, it's pretty bad. The headline numbers like London house prices being up to over 12% in the past year, to many of his sort of constituents, that is good news. But for the majority of the population, 12% house price rises are bad news.
Yes. I mean, we have just sold our house and buying a more expensive one. But that's a misnomer, because actually we're borrowing most of the money to buy that. when you see people in the rush for Christmas in the stores, they're all buying on plastic. In fact, the shop assistants look askance if you actually offer them notes. So they're all buying on debt. How does the debt picture look?
The important thing to note here is that it's all going to housing speculation. There is a decline in debt, a decline in investment. Businesses aren't borrowing to invest. That's the important thing. So where are your jobs going to come from? Where is your wealth creation going to come from? Therefore, you just have debt, which is unsustainable. We have the Red Queen syndrome, it's called. You know, you have to run faster and faster just to stay in the same place. And you see, so this is part of the global story, and the UK economy is just part of the global economy, where more and more debt is needed just to stay flat on GDP, not even to grow anymore. So it's it's all just going to fall into an exhaustion.
The deficit fixation of the government and the Treasury, that kind of went out of fashion as a way of looking at the economy in the Depression of the 1930s, the gold standard and all of that. Keynes, you would have thought, had taught subsequent generations that actually no one can freeze themselves out of recession, that what's necessary is money in people's pockets. I mean, if they're doing all this quantitative easing, which you and Max constantly talk about, if you're going to do the quantitative easing, why not go out on the street, find poor people, and give them the money? That would actually kickstart the economy far more.
That's what they should have done from the beginning, and instead they chose to bail out the bankers and the bondholders of this the global Ponzi scheme that we see. Now, during the 1930s, during the Great Depression, those who escaped recession, at least temporarily first, were the ones who were able to devalue first against gold or drop off the gold standard. Here we have the global currency war, and this is something as well, why we have all this quantitative easing is actually a currency war. It's trying to export your deflation to somewhere else.
When you talk to people, Gayatri talks to people all the time on the streets, on these vox pops. I mean, there's no sign of economic feel-good, is there?
No, see, Stacy, me and George love to go to HMV, get our box sets. But the one that we went in Oxford Street, which is their flagship, they're basically selling their things out for nothing.
You know, I went to Selfridges a few weeks ago, and it was jam-packed to the rafters. 1,000-pound jeans being sold to mostly Middle Eastern, Eastern European people who are very, very wealthy.
The nouveau riche.
Yeah, and I walked down Oxford Street through Marks and Spencer's, deserted.
Yeah.
There's no middle anymore.
Yeah, we noticed that as well.
Yeah.
So HMV is closing down, giving away their stock. It was almost like a market, like a street market.
Yeah.
You get a box set, £2, £4, here you are. Almost whatever you'll offer for it. And the Marks and Spencer's end of the market, nobody's spending. So in London, this is the reason I'm raising this is that in Scotland, for example, where there's a referendum on independence, the story is that London is fabulously wealthy, but that's not true. Only a small part of London.
Well, London is a money laundering center. That's what it is. A lot of the house price boom is about money laundering. It's people from other parts of the world taking their wealth of the nation out of their own nations and sinking it here where they think it's safe. And therefore, they don't mind if they lose 50%, because if you go to a money launderer in a back alley, you're going to get 20 cents on the dollar for laundering your money. So here they're like, well, who cares if house prices fall 40%? At least I get 60% of my ill-gotten gains back.
So does that make London different from other world cities?
Yeah, because they tolerate more. A lot of it, say, for example, came after the Patriot Act. So a lot of Middle Eastern money was afraid to be in the U.S. because of the Patriot Act and the war on terror. So they came here. That drove a lot of money in here. Nobody wants to be too close to the U.S. because they just seize anybody's stuff.
Regulation is lighter here,
Yep.
but also, for the moment at least, Britain is a stable country. So if you're a foreign potentate, or even just somebody who's rich from abroad, you're unlikely to see your property go up in smoke in civil disorder, and you're certainly unlikely to feel Gideon Osborne and David Cameron's hand on your collar, asking you difficult questions about how you got the money.
Sure.
Still less levying tax on you.
Yeah, exactly. And the US and the UK are the only two that don't levy tax on foreign owners of property. But also, remember, the UK has the lowest level of house building since the 1920s, when the population was half what it is now. So you can guarantee that the system is set up by the likes of Gideon and his merry band of cohorts in Downing Street, and they will make sure that the house prices stay up like that. Now, one thing I want to say about all this debt building up, speaking of float like a butterfly and sting like a bee, is that the butterfly effect.
I floated like a bee and stung like a butterfly when I was a boxer. That's kind of why I hung up my gloves. Go
So
on.
you say. You know, the butterfly effect is, you know, in this chaos theory, and we live in a chaotic system at the moment, is that just a small effect somewhere, a butterfly flaps its wings in Africa and causes a hurricane in the Caribbean. This is the theory. And it's one day, it could be 2014, just one little flap of the wing of debt will just blow the whole thing up.
There's a cheerful note for Christmas. Thank you very much, Stacy Herbert, our own champion on the economy. Now, this is where you come in, through our social media portal, RT_Sputnik. Gayatri, what's rattling the pipes?
Huge discussion this week. I stated that after Mandela's death, Muhammad Ali is the greatest global black icon. To which I got a great response of people saying, discussing the matter of mentioning him being black. Asif Siddiqui says, for example, Muhammad Ali is the greatest icon, period. Why should you describe him as a black, white, or any color?
Because he's black?
Because he's black, indeed. I had so many responses saying, get the black out of the sentence, and you still, you know, you still got the line right.
Of course, Ali, whether black or any other color, would be a great global icon. But he is the greatest black global icon. And black people need icons just like everybody else needs icons. I can't imagine that Ali would be in any way unhappy about that description.
No, not at all. And this is just the political correctness.
Political correctness, liberalism, don't get me started.
Indeed, no PC for us. Anyway, there's also a lot of response on whether he was the greatest icon or not. Some people were suggesting MLK Jr., Spike Lee, Malcolm X. Of course, Malcolm X, but he's no more.
Well, Malcolm is no more. Martin Luther King was, of course, a very great icon. He's no longer with us. In any case, his global recognition was never anything like Ali's. People have to shake themselves of the idea that global means Britain and America, or even Europe and America. Everybody in Africa, Asia, the Middle East, Europe, North America, South America, Australasia would know at a glance, at a picture, that's Muhammad Ali. He was the champion of the world.
Phil Adamson says, the only other black icons in the mainstream culture now are NFL, NBA, or rappers, and Obama. None come close to Ali, though.
He's right about that, but he's wrong about the idea that NBA or rappers classify as global.
I don't know. He's talking about mainstream culture, so I agree in that sense.
Nobody in Britain knows what NBA even means.
No, they don't need to know what NBA is, but they know what NBA has. They know Dennis Rodman, they know Michael Jordan.
You're wrong about that. Dennis Rodman's a friend of mine. I mean no disrespect to him, but if we took him in the street now, people would say, that's a remarkably tall man, but nobody would know who he was.
But it's not about the sport, it's about the culture and the outreach they have.
I mean, don't get me started on rappers. First of all, the negativity of the words in most of this rap music, if you want to call it that.
No, I agree.
Is the antithesis of both Mandela and Muhammad Ali. You and I can argue about that later. Go ahead.
Well, and then there were some people who were arguing that he was indeed not at all a great icon. No, he was just boxing in a ring, they're saying, which is unbelievable. To which Mark Hebblewhite responds, he was also a big part in the breaking down of racial tensions in the USA. Who can say he did nothing?
Even if he had only been 3 times the heavyweight champion of the world, never mind that it was taken away from him, never mind that he was effectively quarantined by the power in the United States for the 4 of his best fighting years, then he would be the great icon that we know him to be. But of course, he was very much more than that.
People on Twitter who know that you were a boxer wanted to know whether you boxed like Ali, that is, float like a butterfly and sting like a bee.
No, I floated like a bee and stung like a butterfly. No, I was more Rocky Balboa, I'm afraid.
All right.
I like to think I was Rocky Marciano, but I was kind of more Rocky Balboa, not least because I was a southpaw, leading with the right instead of the left.
Okay, southpaw. Well, that's all the tweets we got time for.
And all we've got time for on this week's show. It just remains for me to wish you and yours a very Merry Christmas.
You can still tweet us during Christmas at RT_Sputnik. It's goodbye from me, Gayatri.
And from me, George Galloway. It's been marvellous.